Welcome to Watches with Dennis, and today I'm going to go over 5 odd watches that I actually like. Longtime channel viewers know that my tastes in watch skew pretty traditional, or you might say staid or boring, depending how you want to look at it. I often struggle to get behind avant-garde designs, but like with all things, there are exceptions, and so here in this video, I want to give you 5 examples. None of these watches I have ever owned, and I will explain on each of them why I don't own them despite actually liking them. First up is Studio Underdog's 01 Series Watermelon. I'll go ahead and specifically say the Gen 3 version because that's the one that's currently on the website. I'm not inherently a fan of watermelon like as a fruit, or the color scheme in general, or the idea of subdials being differently sized. But the combination in this package I think works really well. It's creative, from the playful use of color to the watermelon seeds functioning as hour markers, and the watch is easily recognized for what it is trying to represent. Also, at $675 US, it is quite an approachable price point. So why haven't I ever bought one? Well, when I first learned about the watch, they weren't immediately available. They were on lists. People had been wanting them. There was a lot of demand for them, so I wasn't able to get one right away. They were very popular when they first came out. At this point, though, my issue is the use of the ST1901B movement from Seagull. I've just read too many instances of people that have run into failures with the movement, not necessarily in the Studio Underdog watches themselves, just in general, but knowing that about the movement has really put me off the model, even at this price point, given I've had some past problems with mechanical chronographs breaking down, and I find it very frustrating. The 03 series from Studio Underdog could help me get around this. That's their monopusher style design with a different movement, even though the dial colorways are different. Currently, I haven't seen a watermelon in that series, but you jump up at that point to $2,000 US, so I've just not been able to bring myself to pull the trigger on any Studio Underdog watch. Next up would be the Credor Node. I'm going to say the GCLH985. There are a lot of watches in the Node model line, and many of them are conservative, but there are a few really weird ones. I've picked the GCLH985 because I think it's a good example of what I'm getting at. Also, this particular reference is under 10 millimeters thick with the spring drive movement, thanks to it being a hand wind only model. They aren't all hand wind only, but you can easily see why this watch is not something one would typically associate with me. You've got the power reserve up near the 10 o'clock position. You've got weirdly sized Arabic hour markers, but only at the 2, 4, and 7 positions, and they aren't even all the same size. They crop parts of these numbers off at the edges of the dial, which is another trope that I typically dislike. Date window surprisingly conservative down at the 6 o'clock position. Overall, it's just a really weird looking dial. Beautiful movement, as you'd probably expect, but when I first saw this watch, I was completely confused with what Credor was thinking when they developed it. However, it's so odd I have gravitated towards it. So why haven't I bought one? These tend to go for a few $1,000s, this particular model. And then there are others in precious metal and such that go for more. And they're not currently made to my knowledge, so these are all used watches. Sort of, let's think around the $4,000 US price point last I looked. Well, there are a few competing models, as I just mentioned, that have caught my eye. They have different complications like moon phases and such. And so I haven't totally narrowed it down. I'm just using this one sort of as a case in point example. But honestly, the main thing is the whole tariff situation. Every single one of these that I have seen for sale is for sale in Japan. And so currently, with all the additional taxes on importing, I'm just avoiding getting the watch right now because I keep thinking those tariffs are going to go away. If I ever get a chance to get to Japan, I'd like to actually try some of these on. But if the tariff situation ends, I might go ahead and order one without trying it on first anyway. The third watch on the list is going to be the Ulysse Nardin Freak 1. I'll go ahead and specifically cite the 2405-500-2A/3D. But much like the Credor Node, I like several of these Freak models. Skeletonization normally holds absolutely no appeal to me whatsoever. And this isn't exactly that, but the way the hand points to tell the time with the wheels and the balance wheel all in that makeup, I just think is a really interesting and cool way to pull it off. The Freak line actually came out a couple decades ago, but at this point, it's become extremely iconic, and it's obvious as to why. So, why I don't own one is pretty straightforward. This particular reference MSRP is at $76,700 US. And even used, even the older models, they're all pretty pricey. So, price as a general rule is just what keeps me away from these. They also wear a bit larger than most of the watches I typically like to wear, at least the ones that I like aesthetically. Next up on my list is SpaceOne watches and their Tellurium. This one's pretty funky. It's an odd case shape with a crown up at the 12 o'clock. It has sort of a Starfield dial that reminds me of aventurine glass, and aventurine glass isn't a look I typically gravitate towards, but it makes a lot of sense in this instance because of the space theme, which is further emphasized by the fact that the time telling itself is happening with some celestial-looking spheres. The whole watch screams space, and it's equal parts nerdy and cool to me. SpaceOne lists the price at the Tellurium at 2,990 British pounds, which runs about 3,500 US dollars. So why haven't I bought one? Well, quite frankly, they limited it to 300 units and it was sold out. So I've actually not ever searched to see if they're readily available used. But anyway, it's a really cool watch. And after I saw it, I was like, I wish I had known when it was announced because I would have considered pulling the trigger on one new. And finally, the last odd watch that I wanted to point out that I really like is another expensive one. It's Audemars Piguet's Remaster 02. This is a throwback in the truest 1960s sense of the word. It's an exaggerated horizontal rectangle, which makes it appear as an oversized dial, which looks a lot like some sort of modular design which is tacked on towards the 3 o'clock position to serve as additional content. But the blue looks great, the gold case is an excellent complement to the overall dial aesthetic, and with how the sapphire crystal is shaped and curves downward towards that 3 o'clock position, the watch achieves an elegant look that is very avant-garde in its feature set. I don't care for much in AP's catalog as a general rule, but I do think this one is really interesting. It is limited to 250 units and was priced when it came out at 47,200 US dollars. So it actually launched at a much better price point than I expected when I saw the reveal trailer for it. But it's still too high in price for me, and so it's just not a model that I've ever pursued, even though I think it's really interesting and I would like to wear one. Anyway, there you go. Those are 5 odd watches that I actually like. What are some strange designs that you all like or happen to own? Comment those below as I'd enjoy reading about them. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and subscribe if you want to be automatically notified when I release new videos. That's all for now. Thanks, everybody.